Hello everyone. Today's session is an introduction to Maya Angelou's autobiography, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. The first in a 7-volume series, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings was published in 1969. Angelou was challenged by her friend James Baldwin and her editor Robert Loomis to write an autobiography that was also a piece of literature. Initially, when she was approached with the suggestion, she was not quite sure or she was apprehensive as she was then a poet and a playwright. Her friend James Baldwin used a reverse technique and challenged her, and Maya took up the challenge, and this is what we have. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. Like the author herself, the book is packed with promise. The book was honored with a National Book Award nomination in 1970 and remained on the New York Times paperback bestseller for 2 years. Let us start with a tour through the events that are narrated in the book. The book chronicles the life of Maya from the age of 3 through 16. It has a prologue that is spatially set but not temporally. It is set in the colored Methodist Episcopal Church, where we get to see a 5 or 6-year-old girl who is singing a song, and it goes like this: "What are you looking at me for? I have not come to stay." And these 2 lines with which the prologue starts actually foreshadows Maya's journey and introduces us to the major themes that are to be dealt with in the book. One of Maya's dreams was to wake up beautiful, and we get to see the intensity of racial prejudices that has infiltrated into the minds of a 5-year-old girl through this desire. For her, beauty means white in complexion, blonde hair, and blue eyes. So she wanted to wake up like that, and she was wearing a lavender taffeta dress, which was a handover by a white woman, which was once purple in color. And she was very conscious the way she looked, and she was not confident at all. She believed that she looked ugly, and this affected her confidence. And the second line, that I have not come to stay, shows us her feeling of displacement. She never felt that she belonged to any place. She forgot the song and she ran out of the church, and she tripped over and she peed, but she was relieved that she is out of all the confusion. And we have this happening by the end of the book too, that Maya is relieved and she finds her identity and she is comfortable with herself. So the prologue of I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings foreshadows the events that we are to see in the book. After the prologue, which we said that is not temporally set, we have chapter 1 beginning in 1931, when Maya is 3 and her brother Bailey is 4. These small children are sent to live with their paternal grandmother, Mrs. Annie Henderson, in Stamps in Arkansas after the divorce of their parents. Annie Henderson is quite an influential figure in the town where they live, and she owns a store which is always referred with a capital S, as it is the center of black life. Annie has another son called Willie, who acts as a disciplinarian for Maya and Bailey in the early years of their life. So Annie has two children. One is the father of Maya and Bailey, that is Bailey Johnson Sr. and Willie, who is referred to as Uncle Willie throughout the book. And Uncle Willie was crippled, and many of the black men were envious of Willie that despite being disabled, he is leading a stable life than many of the able-bodied black men. The book also introduces us to the deep-seated Southern racism, and we have several instances in the book which proves the intensity of racism that was prevalent during the time. One such instance is when a former sheriff named Mr. Stewart warns Moma, that is how she is called by Maya and Bailey, warns Moma regarding a black man being searched for after messing with a white woman. And Maya looks at this particular instance as an insensitive one because of the casual attitude with which he tells Moma about the incident. He wants to show that he is concerned, so he warns Moma, but at the same time the casual attitude makes Maya skeptical whether he is actually concerned. And another instance that comes in chapter 5 of the book is an instance where a group of white girls comes to Moma's store and insults her. Here, the girls were quite young. The white girls did not give Moma any respect and insulted her. Maya, who saw it, became very furious, but Moma kept her calm. She showed her maturity and she did not react to it. She was a very strong figure who did not allow anyone to displace her. And this character of Moma influenced Maya in her later life. We also have another incident of a white dentist named Dr. Lincoln, who Maya is taken after having a toothache, and Dr. Lincoln was actually helped by Moma during the time of Great Depression. She gave him money, he borrowed money from her, and though he returned the money, Moma expected him to be thankful to her, and when Maya had a toothache, Moma took her to Dr. Lincoln, and the way Dr. Lincoln reacted by saying that I would better put my hand in the mouth of a dog than put it in the mouth of a black man, infuriated Maya. But Moma there also did not get furious, but she actually got money from Lincoln saying that you had not paid the complete interest. She got $10 from Dr. Lincoln. Though she felt that it was not just, she defended it by the idea of ethics of necessity. We can see this ethics of necessity, the idea of ethics of necessity, in many other instances in her autobiography. And Maya got to see a clear picture of the black men, of the life of the cotton pickers through her initial years in stamps. They woke up at 4 in the morning, and Moma's store was also open by then, and she packed lunch for them, and they were full of energy while they were going for their work. But by the end of the day, they were drained and they lost all their hope, and they earned very less than what they expected. After the Civil War, they were promised land and animals with which they could farm, but the promise was not materialized, and the post-Reconstruction era, which is also known as the Jim Crow era, So, a systematic destruction of the black farmers. It was as problematic as the period of slavery for the black people. So, as we said before, through all these instances, Moma keeps her faith and self-respect intact, and this influences her grandchildren to a great extent. We have Maya's father, Bailey Johnson. Oh, sorry about a spelling mistake here. We have Maya's father, Bailey Johnson Sr., arriving in Stamps around the 10th chapter of the book. He does not really belong to the black community. The way he dresses with a he dresses himself in a suit of wool, and he speaks very fluent English, and his mannerisms and all actually does not belong to the black community in Stamps. And Maya is not very comfortable with him, but Bailey sings naturally with his father and talks a lot with him. And Bailey Johnson, when he leaves Stamps, is taking Maya and Bailey and leaves them with their mother in St. Louis in Mississippi. We have their mother, Vivian Baxter. So Bailey leaves Maya and her brother with Vivian in St. Louis. And we also have another figure called Freeman, Mr. Freeman. Who is Vivian's live-in boyfriend with Vivian. Vivian works in night parlors and comes very late. So Mr. Freeman used to wait for Vivian, and Maya somehow feels sympathetic or empathetic for him, as she knows how it feels to be lonely. So there were times when Mr. Freeman and Maya were alone at home, as Bailey was more social in nature and he made friends wherever he went. So Maya resorted more to reading fairy tales and other books, and she started finding comfort in them. And one day when Maya woke up, or before that, Maya started having nightmares when she was living with Vivian and Mr. Freeman, and so she was allowed to sleep with Vivian and Mr. Freeman during night. And one day when Maya woke up, she could see Mr. Freeman holding her tight and doing something. As a kid, she did not really understand what he was doing, and he threatened her that he will kill Bailey if she tells someone. And Maya was curious why he should kill Bailey, that what happened unnatural that she should tell someone. Maya thought Mr. Freeman is hugging her out of love. Maya, who longed for paternal affection, thought or misunderstood Mr. Freeman's sexual instinct or sexual advancement as physical affection, and she was sexually molested by Mr. Freeman. She does not really understand it, and this happens couple of times before Mr. Freeman actually rapes Maya. Mr. Freeman rapes Maya, and again he threatens Maya by saying that he'll kill Bailey if she tells someone. So she tucks her stained underwear under the bed, and she does not tell anyone, though it was hurting her very badly. And later Bailey found out her stained undergarments and asked her what happened. So Vivian immediately took Maya to a hospital, and she was not giving any idea to Vivian who caused the harm to her, but she told Bailey that it was Freeman. So Mr. Freeman was arrested, and he was put in jail. So when when Maya was taken to court, she was asked this question whether he did something like to her before. She was scared whether her family will criticize her. She said a no, and Mr. Freeman was given a bail there, and bail before his punishment to be in jail for 1 year and 1 day. And when he went out, he was killed by someone. So Vivian's mother, Mrs. Baxter, had underworld connections, and so did her brothers. They were quite rich, and during the period, legitimate ways for a black man to make money was very less. So these people were associated with smuggling drugs and all, and they had quite a lot of money, and they used to beat up people and all. So Maya thinks that Mr. Freeman was murdered by Vivian's brothers. And Maya feels guilty about this. Maya is angry at Mr. Freeman, not for raping her, but because of this fact that she misunderstood his sexual advancements as parental affection, and she was guilty that he died because she said lies in the court that the rape was the first event that happened, and she did not mention the molestations that happened before. So Maya is guilty, and she chooses to be silent from then on. So she is not talking to anyone other than Bailey at this point of her life, as she feels that her words are doing harm to people. So we can see the very deep moral conscience in Maya here. And initially, the Baxter family thinks that it is a post-rape trauma or depression that Maya is in, and they are okay with her silence, but later they are annoyed by her silence, and they are sent back to Stamps in Arkansas to Annie Henderson, their mama again. Maya is relieved to be back in Stamps, to be away from all the atmosphere that caused her the trouble, but Bailey is very sad to go back to the very peaceful and calm, or rather nothing much happening Stamps, but he is ready to go with his sister. So here Maya is introduced to another character called Mrs. Bertha Flowers, who is the aristocrat of Stamps. Moma introduces Maya to Mrs. Bertha Flowers. Mrs. Bertha Flowers cooks for Maya, introduces her to more literature, and asks her to recite poems, asks her to by heart the poems and to recite it to make her come out of her silence. And this really works, and Maya is happy that somebody is caring for her. Though Moma cares for Maya and Bailey, she was not much of an expressive woman. She did not really express her love and concern for Maya and Bailey, and for the first time, Maya is happy that somebody is doing things for her, that Bertha is cooking for her, Bertha wants to listen to her and all. So Bertha was successful, and through literature and love, Bertha actually makes Maya speak again. And the next episode happens with a lady called Viola Cullinan. These are all minor characters who are there for a short while in the book. So Maya was sent to work with Mrs. Viola Cullinan at the age of 10, and Mrs. Viola, who could not pronounce Maya's original name, which is Margaret, and there is a story behind Maya's name being changed from Margaret to Maya. We'll just tell that in the middle, and we'll get back to the episode of Mrs. Viola Cullinan. The story was told to her by her uncles, that is, her uncles from the Baxter family, that when Maya was too young, her brother Bailey could not pronounce her name Margaret. And the spelling of the Margaret is also different from the English version of the name. So Bailey, her brother Bailey, could not pronounce this name, and he started calling him Maya sister and my sister, and thus Margaret became Maya. So coming back to the episode of Mrs. Viola Cullinan, Mrs. Viola Cullinan could not pronounce, or rather was not very comfortable with the name Margaret, and she, in order to make her job easy, renames Maya as Mary, an English name, and Maya was not at all comfortable with this name, with this process of renaming, and she once listens Mrs. Viola Cullinan talking to one of her friends about renaming Maya, and Maya wanted to take revenge for renaming her. So she decided to resist to that, but she also knew that Moma will not be happy if she leaves the job and gets back. So she had to find another way to get out from the job that she had at the place of Mrs. Viola Cullinan. She purposefully breaks the chinaware of Mrs. Cullinan, and Mrs. Viola is very unhappy and enraged that she calls Maya Margaret then, the English version with a G-A-R-E-T, but Maya is given back her name there. So we can see this act as a subversive form of resistance, that Maya could not resist in an open way. She could not tell Viola that you cannot change my name, you cannot call me Mary instead of Margaret or Maya. So she chose a subversive or a silent form of resistance, that she acted in some way which showed her resistance, and Maya lost her job and she was very happy to go back to Moma. And then we have another episode of the annual revival meeting that happens in the church, and we have another instance of subversive resistance. We'll add that here, along with ethics of necessity, subversive resistance. There is another act of subversive resistance that is mentioned in this episode of the annual revival meeting, where the speaker criticizes the white people without directly mentioning them. So we know that the speaker is actually talking about the white people, but there is no direct reference there. So through his speech, he is criticizing them, he is resisting to the way in which the white people behave. And when they get out of the revival meeting, the people get to see a honky-tonky party, and Maya contemplates on both the events together, that is the revival meeting and the party, and she feels that both the group of people, that is the people who are attending the revival meeting and the party, are trying to shed off their troubles. They are trying to find out some kind of relief for themselves. And then we have another instance of a boxing champion, Joe Louis. When this happens, when this chapter begins, we have a group of people crowded in Moma's store, and we have Uncle Willie turning their radio to maximum volume so that all the people can hear commentary of the heavyweight championship boxing competition that is happening between Joe Louis and a white man. So the black people wanted Joe to win so that it is a proof against all the racist theory. So Joe wins the match and they are so proud of it, and then we have Maya befriending a girl called Louise Kendricks. Louise is actually Maya's first friend outside the family. Till then, Maya was only comfortable with her family, and her only friend was Bailey. So when she has a friendship with Louis, we can see Maya getting back the life of a teenager, that they talk about boys, they talk about the daily affairs. Before that, with the rape instance with Mr. Freeman, Maya was introduced, or rather pushed into adulthood before she actually had to. So a small girl actually had to go through an instance which demanded maturity of an adult, and that affected her life throughout, and it was a friendship with Louis that actually brings back that innocence in Maya, and she belongs more to her age at this point. And in school, during the Valentine month, she also receives a proposal from a boy named Tommy Walden. Tommy proposes to Maya, but Maya, who once mistook Mr. Freeman's motives, is not very confident about another relationship, so she says a no to him. And we can see how this particular instance has affected Maya. She is scared to trust people anymore. She is scared of the very idea of love. But Tommy sends her a letter again, and with the second letter, Maya decides to give it a try, and it is the spirit of Maya that takes her forward, and she gets it from all the female figures in her life. If we look at Mrs. Henderson or Vivian or Mrs. Baxter, all the women figures in her life are quite strong, and they live their lives according to their own terms in possible ways. So when Tommy proposed her for a second time, Maya chooses to go ahead with the flow, but the relationship did not happen, as by the time Tommy's love had faded away. And we have another instance where Bailey is being used by a girl, a much elder girl to her, a much older girl called Joyce. And though not as malicious as Mr. Freeman's use of Maya, Joyce is also using Bailey for her sexual fulfillment. And financial motives also, because Bailey used to steal things from the store and give it to Joyce, and later she elopes with another man, and Bailey is left hurt, and Maya hates Joyce for hurting her brother, though she is happy that Joyce is no more in Bailey's life to trouble him. Then we have the instance of the 8th grade graduation of Maya's school. The chief guest of the graduation was a man called Edward Donlevy. Who boast about the advancements and the new machines that he installed in the white school to advance science experiments, but also says indirectly that the black children are have a future only to be servants or to be athletes. This infuriates Maya and she is deeply hurt, and Edward's speech is followed by Henry Reed's valedictory speech. Who tried to cheer up the children, but in Maya's case it did not really happen. And by the end of the graduation ceremony, they had the Black national anthem being sung there, and we can see a Maya who is very proud listening to the song. And here we can see a change from the young little girl who was not at all confident about herself, who felt that she looked ugly, to a girl who takes pride in being a part of the community. So we have Maya as a proud member of the Black community here, and then comes the instance of Dr. Lincoln that we said before. So and we have another instance where Bailey comes home very pale and depressed one day, and he narrates that he had to help to pull a rotten body from the pool, and he notices the intensity of hatred in the eyes of the white man. He asks Moma what Black people did to incite so much of hatred in the minds of the whites. Though the question is asked by Bailey to Moma, it is a question that is posed to the conscience of every reader who reads the text. What has the Black people done to incite so much of hatred towards them, to consider them inferior and some other group superior to them? And with this instance, Moma is actually scared about the grandchildren's life instance, and she decides to take them to Los Angeles. A lady who had not traveled 50 miles away from her hometown has saved money and is taking her children to Los Angeles and is living with them for another 6 months till their mother, Vivian, is making arrangements for her children to get settled there. So she leaves her store and Willie and all behind for the well-being of her grandchildren. And from Los Angeles, they move to San Francisco, where Vivian marries another man who is named as Daddy Cliddell. Maya and Bailey calls him Daddy Cliddell. So Vivian marries Daddy Cliddell and they move to San Francisco. And Daddy Cliddell is the only father figure in the book that Maya feels comfortable with, Maya feels she could lean on. And when they reached San Francisco, it was the period of World War II, and there was a feeling of displacement. And Maya, who was displaced from the very beginning of her life, who could not associate herself with any place, is very comfortable with the displacement that is here. And for the first time in her life, she feels at home and she feels comfortable in San Francisco. And she attends an unsegregated school there. She is just one of the 3 black girls in her class. She started learning dance and drama, so her learning opportunities widened, and all this influences her. And an instance of ethics of necessity comes in here again. Daddy Cliddell has some conman friends who tricks white people, who tricks selfish white people, and there also Maya does not really want to consider them criminals because she feels that it is the ethics of necessity that works there, which might not be right from another perspective, but from a black person's perspective, it is okay to do so. As as Annie Henderson or her MoMA did with Dr. Lingon in an earlier instance. And during summer, Maya is called by her daddy, Bailey Johnson Sr., to live with him and his girlfriend, Dolores. They have conversations before, and Maya attempts to be comfortable with her. But once she reaches there, Dolores finds Maya coming between Bailey and herself, and Maya was fined as a disruption in the way they led their life. So they were not very comfortable with each other. And Bailey was a very good chef, and he used to travel to Mexico to get groceries, and Maya was called to accompany Bailey in one such trip, and this made Dolores unhappy. And after the shopping, she waited for some time for Bailey, and she could not find him, and when she searched for him, she could find her father drunk, and she decided to drive the car by herself. And she drove, and their car met with an accident, and by the time Bailey Johnson Sr. was awake, and he managed to settle the case, and they drove back home. And so we can see again a courageous Maya who is willing to take up risk. And this one characteristic of her character is something that leads her forward in her life. And once she gets back home, she has another bad fight with Dolores. She warns Dolores as she talks bad about her mother Vivian, or Dolores calls Vivian a whore, and Maya warns her that she will slap Dolores if she does not stop speaking like that. And like her mother Vivian, she was also very courageous that she actually slapped Dolores and she left home. So she lived in a junkyard for another 1 month, where she had mixed group of people of mixed age, mixed identity, mixed racial identity, ethnicity and all. And this particular period was a revelation for Maya that people could actually live together. It was very different from the segregated life that she saw in South, in Stamps. In Stamps, it was very much segregated. That does not mean that the segregation was any less in San Francisco or in St. Louis, in the urban areas, but it was not as evident or explicit as it was in the southern area. And Maya, by the end of the first month, calls Vivian and asks money to buy a ticket to San Francisco, and gets back to San Francisco, and she takes a break for 1 year from her studies, and she attempts to get a job and finds one as a streetcar conductor. And Maya is the first black streetcar conductor in America, and in the course of time she reads The Well of Loneliness, which is actually a lesbian work which talks about lesbianism, and Maya is scared whether she is a lesbian. So she wants to convince herself that she is not one. The Puritan in her was quite scared about being a person of same-sex relationships. So she wanted to convince herself that she is not one, and she has a relationship with a couple of boys, and she gets pregnant, and she was doing high school then, and she informs Bailey, her brother, that she is pregnant, and Bailey says that if she informs her family at this point, they might ask her to quit school. So Maya hides her pregnancy till her 8th month, and once she is done with her high school, she tells it to her mother, and her family accepts Maya's pregnancy without much of drama. They are very supportive at this point, and Maya at the age of 16 is the mother of a son. And she was very scared, and Vivian at this point is very supportive for Maya. She tells Maya to believe in her maternal instincts and makes her comfortable with her baby boy in a period of 3 to 4 months. And when the book I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings ends, we have a Maya who is accepting her son and who is proud about herself. The rest of her life, as we said before, is dealt in the series that continues, the series of books that continues, and the first one that we are looking at stops here with Maya accepting her son and being a very proud woman. So that is with the plot or the events that are narrated in I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. We'll also look at the title of the work, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. The title is actually taken from a poem by Paul Laurence Dunbar. And the poem is Sympathy. So the title I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings is taken from Paul Laurence Dunbar's poem Sympathy, and she compares herself or the entire black race to a caged bird. The prototypical struggle of every black man or woman to find freedom and self-worth is what she is narrated through the book. Though it is a first-person narration, and it is a story of Maya that we are getting to see through the book, she speaks for her entire community. The struggle to find identity, freedom and self-worth is common to all of them. And when we see Maya, we can see that along with the problems of adolescence, she has to deal with the problems of race and gender. So, the problems of a black woman is double than the problems of a black man. She also has to deal with the problems of gender, or she also has to deal with sexism other than the problems that are faced by a black man. So, Maya represents her black community through her work, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. And coming back to the title, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. She knows why the caged bird sings, and that is not revealed to us through the book. Why does the caged bird sing? So now we have to ask ourselves, why does the caged bird actually sing? It is perhaps to break free from the confinement, that it does not want to be inside the cage, that it is calling to break free from the cage. Perhaps to find solace, that the singing gives it some relief, or to communicate that it knows that this is the way, it is through the song that it can communicate to the outer world. So this could all be reasons that the caged bird is singing. We can associate the song of the caged bird to the poem, to the jaguar in Ted Hughes' poem, The Jaguar. The jaguar, who is a visionary, whose spirit is not able to be crushed by the cage. So here we have a bird, we have the black people whose spirit is not crushed by the confinements that they are in. They are still singing, hoping for a better tomorrow. And the power of words or reading or literature is also brought in here by Maya. There are many instances where she finds solace in reading. There is an initial instance where she starts reading Shakespeare and she feels guilty about it, that she is happy reading a white man. And then we also saw when they moved to St. Louis, Maya finds solace in reading, and it was reading and speaking out, reciting the literature that broke the silence of Maya after the rape incident in the book. So, words are given much power in the book by Maya. So, this can also be associated with the song of the bird. Probably the bird is singing because words has got so much of power. The song has got so much of power, and Maya wants her song to reach so many people that it can motivate others to come forward. And that could be one reason why she has actually talked about all her insecurities, all the troubles, the emotional trauma and all in such depth that she wants people to know that even after going through all these, you still have a hope. You still can have hope to come out of this. You will have a better tomorrow. So the positive tone of her work renews the reader's belief in the human ability to mitigate random injustice, to thrive and to survive. And we saw that the setting of the novel actually is in the United States, and it starts from the south in Stamps in Arkansas. And then moves to St. Louis, and then to California, to San Francisco, and the setting moves from Stamps to all these cities, and each place where Maya is in contributes to the person that she has become. And we can also look at the book as a Bildungsroman. As we already know, Bildungsroman is a work that talks about the development of a person or a coming of age story, and here we can see the growth of Maya, both physical, spiritual, emotional and social. We get to see a Maya at the age of 3 when the book begins, and we get to see her at the age of 16 by the end of the book. And we have spiritual growth. We can say that a Maya who was furious when the white girls insulted her grandmother is now at the age of 16 able to handle things in a more mature way. So she has grown in a spiritual dimension, and we have a Maya who is confident about herself by the end of the book. We could see Maya who decided to be a white girl in the beginning, but now she takes pride in who she is, and she has decided to get the best out of it rather than dreaming to be someone else. So we can see the growth of Maya here, and the book can also be categorized under Kunstelroman, as it is the growth of an artist that we get to see here. And as we already mentioned before, it is the positive tone of the work that makes it very striking one. So I hope that with all this you can go for another reading of the text, and we will get back for a deeper analysis of the novel after the next reading. Thank you.